Welcome everyone to the State of the Village of Sequoia Village. We have not had these kind of meetings very often. Sequoia Village, as you all know, got started way back in 2015. We quite an amazing, and so I'm going to ask people to mute at this point. We got off to a really great start with a whole lot of amazing volunteers. And eventually, as we expanded into a hub and spoke type of organization, many of our original Sequoia Village leaders and volunteers sort of migrated or morphed into VSMC, Villages of San Mateo County. So we still have a very large group of very active volunteers in Sequoia Village, but they tend to be more in the overall Villages of San Mateo County role. Occasionally, we've had Sequoia Village leadership meetings like this, but only like a couple of them in the past year. We're going to start having them more regularly. It's important. The other two villages do. I don't think we want to get left in the dust, so to speak, and there's not much chance of that, but still, it's important for us to have regular Sequoia Village meetings. So we'll plan to start doing that perhaps every 2 months from here on. I'm going to share, first of all, a brief agenda for today, so you know where we're headed. We're going to introduce some of our Sequoia Village lead volunteers. We're going to have a finance and budget review presented to us by Dave McClure. We will have some village membership and volunteer statistics presented by a couple of our fine member coordinators. And then we'll review some service request statistics. We will look at volunteer opportunities for the near future, as some of us are cutting back on our roles a bit, and that opens up some really fun things for others to get involved in. And then we'll have finished with a word from our VSMC Executive Director, Sue Eldridge, who I think most of you know already. So we'll start off by asking Dave McClure, perhaps, to review our finances and budget. And Dave, would you like me to share the PowerPoint? And you'll have to unmute yourself, I think.
You mentioned on your agenda you were going to introduce some of the leaders. You want to do that first? You want me to proceed?
No, I'll do that just one at a time, and you're the first.
Okay.
And so we'll cover your topic first, which is...
Can you shrink that to fit in the window?
I'm going to attempt to do it. Slideshow from the beginning. Boom. How's that?
There you go.
Okay.
The first slide is a statement of activities for last fiscal year. Statement of activities, for those of you who are familiar with the finance terms, is the equivalent of a income statement or profit and loss statement for profit business. It's the lingo used in nonprofits. We had a year that was actually better than we expected from the standpoint of having a positive bottom line. We had budgeted for about a $20,000 loss, but we hired fewer staff members or had on board fewer staff members than we expected to. And as a result of that, our expenses were lower. So we ended up with a net on the bottom line of almost $16,000. The one item that's a negative is the income and loss. That's due to the fact that mid 2020, we decided to put some of our money into what I thought was going to be a very conservative mutual fund, which turned out to be not conservative enough based on what happened last year to almost everybody's investment that they had in the stock and bond market, and we end up with a loss. We're making headway on recovering that so far this year, and we'll hope that it continues. You want to go on to the next? Well, let's see if there's any questions. I'll stop after I comment and see if there's a question on each slide before I proceed. Any questions on the last slide? Okay, the statement of financial position, and again, in the lingo that most of you may be more familiar with, is like a balance sheet for a nonprofit. The asset side, we have money in the checking and savings account of $278,861, and investments in the investment I mentioned earlier of $138,000 for a total of almost $417,000. Very small amount of that, if you see at the bottom of the line with donor restrictions, is a carryover of of grants that had restrictions that we have to live up to before we can release the money to the profit and loss side of things. So we're in good shape for going forward. Any questions on that one?
I'm sorry, I advanced pretty quickly. but
Yeah.
I think for some of the people in this meeting, it might be quite astounding to realize the very solid financial position that we're in. And this allowed us to make a transition in our organization to hiring Sue, our executive director, and we have other hiring in the works to really move us into a new type of organization.
The next one is the balance sheet showing the amounts on the books by village. And what I would point out here is that Mid-Peninsula Village in the middle has a lot lower number than Sequoia Village or the village of the coast side. And that's due to the very generous contribution of $45,000 out of a bequest that we received 3+ years ago. Otherwise, it would be about the same as we have in Sequoia Village. So the hub benefited from that transfer and has continued to have a generous contribution, as you'll see from each of the villages otherwise, to continue to fund the hub. So this again is the 417 that was on the previous slide, broken down by the various elements, the hub and the 3 villages that we have in the villages of San Mateo County. Any questions on this one? Okay, Scott, one more. This is the village budget for the overall villages of San Mateo County for this coming fiscal year. That started January 1st and will run through December 31st. We're planning on or budgeting for a loss of $116,731, and that's because we're going to add staff in advance of increasing membership, donations, and grants, and expecting that we'll get back to a positive view of things within a couple of years. But as based on the prior financial position that we just demonstrated, we have plenty of money to be able to cover this for this year. And we're going to hire staff, 2 new staff positions, in addition to having Sue on board as the executive director. Any questions about this one? Okay, the next one, Scott. This one is Sequoia Village by itself. And as you can see, most of the money is being transferred to the hub, $127,574. That's a combination of 90% of the dues going to the hub, coupled up with one-time significant contribution of $33,000, almost $34,000 that we have agreed to as the executive team to move to the hub in order to fund the new staffing that's going on there. As a result of that, the net income on the bottom line is $42,650 negative. But here again, we have the resources on the balance sheet to be able to fund that. The biggest single expense, as you can see, is the member services, programs, and events. This is a combination of what's done to care for our members in their home safety issues, for events, and for excursions, and it takes the major amount of the expense budget to be able to fund those items. That brings us to a bottom line of $42,650 negative. So that's the last slide. I got to thinking about after the fact that I should have put this into pie chart form, and it would have been more informative than a bunch of numbers. But I'll stop here and ask if there's any questions.
Well, thank you, David. That was excellent overview of our finances. Should we be worried about the fact that we have a big negative budgeted for this year? Nope, I think you're muted, Dave.
We are in really good shape to be able to do that. We can afford to be running negative for 2 or 3 years before we would be really concerned about it.
Right.
This accumulation has taken place over the 8-year history of the villages, and It's been due to the generous contributions by people and the fact that we've tried as much as possible to be conservative about the amount we spend on things, but we've done better than I ever expected we would at this point in time. And I think we're in good shape to be able to invest in the future.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, thank you for that overview.
Just as a comment, I'm going to jump off in about half an hour for a medical appointment and then back on again if the meeting is still going on. So if anybody has any questions, they could always get in touch with me offline. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So the village concept.
You have a question, a couple of
Okay.
them probably.
Let's see. I don't see the question. Oh, there it is. Ada, I'm going to click the ask to unmute and then you can ask the question, but you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I just did.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question about the grants. It seems to me that is there some, how do you determine who you can ask grants from?
Well, good question. There are several of us, a lot of us actually, that keep our eyes open for opportunities. And very early on in our development, we found that the Sequoia Healthcare District and the Peninsula Healthcare District were grant opportunities. PAMF is another one. And then we've had smaller grants from other foundations that we come into contact with. So, but we're always looking. If you have some ideas that you want to share with us after the meeting, I think we don't want to get too much into detail during this meeting, but we would love to talk to you about that.
Okay, we'll touch bases later. Thank you.
Super, thanks, Etta. And Pat, your hand appears to be up.
Yeah, I was just going to offer an observation that we are in an extraordinarily strong financial position. Dave could talk more about that, but for an organization of our size, to have a balance sheet with the kind of money we have is really quite extraordinary. And that's a tribute to the management of our income and outgo by the senior management team. So thank you all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Pat. So Sue, you have your hand up.
I was trying to raise my hand. I see Joan there too. I wanted to say that I just want to echo what an amazing financial position we're in, thanks to all of our founders, and Scott's been really central to fundraising. As I talk to other villages, they sort of drop their jaw when I talk about our reserves. As we're spending down at the same time, you know, a priority for me is that fundraising piece. So it probably goes without saying, but we'll see that we're on a downslope in terms of spending some of our reserves, but through time, I think that will come back up, and we'll be both looking for new grants, and we'll also be putting more of a focus on individual giving. The year-end campaign this year was pretty amazing. We had, I think, close to 90 individual contributors and raised over $20,000. So it's as much a measure of success by the number of people that gave in combination with the generosity that we raised. So
thank you for that. Joan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, maybe I misheard, but at some point, is there consideration to raising the dues even just a little bit to help cover?
We've never wanted to do that, and there's been no discussion of it. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I want to move on. We do have a lot of topics to cover, so I'm sorry if I'm not going to, if I do cut off some of the questions a little bit short. The next key volunteers that I want to hear from, that you want to hear from, represent member intake into our organization. That's why we're here, is to serve our members. So let's cover the membership side of things, and Cynthia Ford and Sandra Neff are the member coordinators for Sequoia Village. Cynthia, you want to start off?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. So So what does a membership coordinator do? Most of you know, but this is a little bit more on what we're up to. Clearly, we talk with potential members and we try to give them a complete picture of the membership benefits. And then if there's a fit, we go through the steps with them to get them to their final position in Club Express so that they're members. In 2022, Sandra and I and Stephanie brought in 40 new members. And so that was a pretty good year. Now, that said, I would just want to say that I think that this is one of the best roles in the place. And I say that because I get to know all the new members. It's a really interesting group of people. I can have absolute confidence that our superb volunteer group is going to support these members well. Over time, we get to know members better and better, and so that means that we can serve them better. And then there are the benefits. We have, I think Sandra and I and Stephanie hear of all of the compliments that are coming in about various volunteers and about the general concept of the villages. It's really positive feedback coming to us. There are currently across the 3 villages, 6 membership coordinators. And none of us is going anywhere anytime soon, but it's always good to have your second, someone else who's there to help you when you need extra help. And so this is skipping ahead a little bit, Scott, but we're looking for some extra help. And if there's anybody out there who thinks that this is something for them, then please contact either me, again, it's Cynthia Ford, or Sandra. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn you over to Sandra, who's going to talk to you about a related job, which is mentoring.
Hi, thanks, Cynthia and Scott. So mentoring is just sort of a partner with a member that's not on the membership coordinator team, but someone that can follow up. When we go out and we give the members a new binder, as you well know, but sometimes it's overwhelming, all the information we're giving the new members. So a mentor is someone that's there. They can either go to their house and visit with them, but over COVID, we just called them. And you can call them at least once a month or a couple times a month, whatever works best for you to help your new member. And they have your phone number so they can call you and if they have questions or they're confused about something. So currently right now, and the time that you mentor the member is about 3 months. So right now we have 6 mentors that just covers Sequoia Village. The other 2 villages have their own way they process this. So we're looking to add, 2 or 3 or 4 new volunteers. And it's just a wonderful way to be a part of Sequoia Village and to meet your new members and to help them as needed. So guidelines and training is it's very easy. We give you a guideline of what's expected. And it's really kind of a fun way to meet new people. So that's sort of how that goes. And yeah, give us a call. We're welcoming you. Any questions on membership? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia and Sandra. Well, while you were talking, my computer shut down, which is kind of awful because I have some things I want to show later. But I'll try to figure that out in the next few minutes. And in the meantime, move on to asking Irene Liana, who had been our volunteer coordinator for many years, and has recently moved on to some other things. Irene, do you want to talk about what you're involved in now? And you'll need to find the unmute button somewhere. Is Irene still there?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I apologize for all the noise in the background. There's a lot of construction going on in my street. So anyway, what you may or may not know is there was a leadership program sponsored by the Chamber in San Mateo County. So past year, I took the leadership program, which involved like 9 months of training once a month and graduation in June. So after doing that and meeting all the people in the county, I decided, well, it's probably time to do something with this knowledge and this network I developed or have. So what I did is I applied for one of the positions that were open on the Commission on Aging, which is a county commission in San Mateo County. It involves all the cities in the county. And in July, I was one of the people selected to be on the Commission on Aging. We also have 2 other village volunteer members, Kathy Yule and Monica Lee, who are on Commission on Aging. And what the Commission on Aging is, as I said, it's a San Mateo County wide commission. The mission, and I will read this so I don't mess it up. The mission of the San Mateo County Commission on Aging and Area Agency on Aging, in compliance with the Older Americans Act and the Older Californians Act, is to maintain, enhance, and improve the quality of life for older adults and adults with disabilities in San Mateo County through the promotion of independence and self-sufficiency, mental and physical health, and social and community involvement. That's a lot of words, but I think this certainly is in line with villages of San Mateo County and what the villages are doing. And there are 17 commissioners on the Commission on Aging. The term is for 3 years. So I started, I think I was sworn in July, August timeframe, and started in September. One of the other requirements for the Commission on Aging is to be on a committee. And there are actually 3 major committees. And I've decided to be on transportation and aging in the community, because I think this really ties in with what we're doing in villages, and also middle income senior opportunities. So focusing on middle income seniors in our county and all the issues they are facing. So that's kind of what I'm about. Also, I had to select a city to be a buddy for. I was hoping it would be San Carlos, but that was already taken. So I am going to be a buddy for San Bruno. And, consequently, we are working with San Bruno. I know Eric Hansen, Victoria, Sue have started, and it's in the infancy of village in San Bruno. So I attended one meeting and got to meet some of the people at the San Bruno Community Center, and Eric gave a presentation that particular day. And I think 2 members signed up and a couple of volunteers. So yay, it's really moving forward. So that's kind of what I'm about now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be with villages and perform some other functions that are needed. So that's kind of it. I know I won't give you any statistics. I know you get my monthly email every month and you know hours and dollars and all of that. And I just sent one out this last week. So you know how we ended up the year 2022. It was pretty phenomenal. Over 318,000, almost 319,000 hours were donated, which is just incredible for all three villages. So thank you everyone for what you're doing. I'm around, so if I can answer any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Irene. I cannot see from my cell phone if anybody is raising their hands, but I'd rather move along to some other guests and speakers that are going to be presenting, and then maybe save questions till the end. We still are going to hear from Randy Kutnewski, who's going to talk about Sequoia Village participation in the VSMC office function. We're going to hear from Diane Goldman on the social events team, representing Sequoia Village there. Pat Brown will talk to us a little bit about his role in the village and Village Movement California. And then I will present some statistics after that. So I think, Matt, now maybe we'll move to Randy. And Randy, can you fill us in on your role in the village and the office team in particular? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. My role in the village, I started as a founder, and that was with Sequoia Village. This is the first village that was formed, and then we added MPV. So that's why so many of the board members and founders come out of Sequoia Village. I'm currently the chairman of the board. That always cracks me up. I love to say that. I'm the chairman of the board, or I guess I should say chairwoman. And then my key role, in addition to being a general volunteer, has been to manage the office function. And as I expect you all know, the office is really the command central of the villages. It's where everything comes together, all the communications, all the requests for services, and the assignment of volunteers for services come through the office. It's not we do have a physical building, but it's really a virtual place where our office team answers the phone and people call in. And then we do some things like managing, putting together volunteer handbooks and things like that. So I would guess that there isn't anybody on this call who hasn't at one time or another called the office. And most of the communications that you get from VSMC will say, call the office for something. It's a service request. You want to get involved in an event. You have a question about getting something on the medical equipment program. Whatever your questions might be and whatever activity we might be promoting, it generally comes through the office. We have a really top-notch dedicated office team, and they man the phones from 9 to 1, 5 days a week. And they are there to answer the phone and take your email messages. They coordinate also with the volunteers. And I'm so thrilled when I make phone calls. We often have to call out to volunteers to ask for rides that are coming up, and we haven't had a volunteer yet. So I often make those calls, as do all of the office volunteers. And when someone answers the phone, "Hi, Randy," knowing that I'm going to ask them to do something, I'm always just thrilled that they answer the phone when I'm calling. So I appreciate that for all of you volunteers that are there, that respond when the office calls. we like chatting with you as well, but it's often because we need some help covering something that we haven't been able to get covered yet. We have several people from the office. The majority of our office team is out of Sequoia Village, just because of that we started that way. So we have on the call that I can see, and I'm sorry if I missed someone because I haven't seen your face. We have Scott and Joan and Pat, Leonie, Shirley, Karen isn't on the phone. And then we're bringing on the people that aren't on the phone are Anne and Marga and Kathy Conry. And we're bringing on 3 new office staff now that are in training. So some of you have noticed that sometimes things aren't managed the way they were the last time you did something. And that may be because we have someone new and they go through some training and eventually we throw them into the deep end and, they run an office shift. And so sometimes, so I'm just asking that you have patience. You can help them by telling them, here's what usually happens. This is a normal ride for me. It's put in all of that, be patient. And on the volunteer side, also have patience with the new volunteers. Sometimes we get very, very swamped, so it may take a while to come back to you. We also have volunteers that are kind of office adjuncts, and I see one person on the call, that's Elke Jones, who helps us when we have mailings and things like that have to go out. We coordinate with all of the other management teams. We work closely with the membership coordinators, with Sandra and Cynthia. We work closely with the volunteer coordinators, that's Irene. We also work with the emergency team. Bob Franco is represented here, and the social events team and Diane Goldman. So everything eventually gets to the office in some way. And the volumes of calls and requests from Sequoia Village is more than the other 2 villages. We have more members, we have more volunteers, and the office covers the entire VSMC. So we're not just an office for Sequoia Village, we're the whole shebang. And the volunteers that respond to the office requests do the same thing. So I think Scott maybe is going to show these charts, but the number of requests and the volunteer services he'll talk about. So I would love to have anybody, and I can see this is kind of turning into a little bit, I think I'm the 3rd person who said, join my team. But if you have an interest, we love talking to all the people. We get to know them. We know what their appointments are for. We know who's in their family. It's just heartwarming to have this kind of connection with the folks. And we're working with a computer system that helps us along. Some of you may have seen that sometimes there's a glitch and things get dropped because something changed in our computer system. So we're just all enjoying this and enjoying being part of Sequoia Village.
Thank you, Randy. I'm going to move it along a little bit, and I've joined Shirley now on her computer since mine is bummed out on me. And I'll see if I can pull up some documents a little bit later. But let's move to Diane Goldman, who can talk to us a little bit about social events and, kind of an overview of the kind of things that go on. Thanks, Diane.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Goldman, and I am in charge of the Social Events Committee. And just as a little background for some of you, prior to the pandemic, what we used to do, well, basically 3 big events a year. And our big events were 2 for our members and 1 for our volunteers. And we always had a theme and, had a space. It was a luncheon. We had entertainment. and such. Anyway, when the pandemic hit and let me back up again. And, and we had other things that we did excursions, and we tried to do those when Claire Gardella was in charge, tried to do those once a month. And when the pandemic hit, everything came to a screeching halt with our in-person kind of events. And so for the last, I'd say 6 months or so, we've been trying to re-up those again. And we were successful in the fall in having a fiesta for our members, and then basically an hors d'oeuvre and wine afternoon for our volunteers. And I mean, many of our volunteers are also members, so yay, they get to partake in everything. And we had a pretty good turnout. I think for the member event, we had 70 plus, and for the volunteer event, we had 80 plus. And the event that we had for the members was the fiesta. It was catered by Mama Coco's. We like to try to use a local vendor, support local businesses, especially after the pandemic. And then for our volunteer event, we had Irene's wonderful nephew cater for us, and he's done other events for us as well. And for both events, we use the ACC in San Carlos, which is sort of our go-to place. We're partners with them, so we are able to get their space at a relatively good price. And it's just a wonderful facility. It's lovely, and they're very accommodating to what we need. Anyway, we have those two events. We're planning for 2023, 3 events again, but we're going to change it up a little. We're going to do a spring event for members and volunteers. We decided it was time for members and volunteers to commingle, get to know each other a little bit, because a lot of us as volunteers get to know those members that we interact with directly, but not all of them or many of them. So in probably late April, May, we will have a volunteer and member event. And then in the fall, do a member only and a volunteer only event. And hopefully they'll all be at the ACC. But in conjunction with that, we've also got our excursions up and running again. We have now Victoria is helping basically orient Cynthia Salome, who has taken over for Claire for excursions. And we've had some good ones in the last several months, and we have a kind of a new venture we're going into for actually 2 weeks from now. And we're going to try to do, apart from our regular excursions, we're going to try to do lunches in different parts of the peninsula or wherever for our folks. And so this is just a luncheon, and it's going to be at the Basque Cultural Center up in South San Francisco, which is wonderful. And so we're going to try to do those as well as the excursions. And we have some, I don't want to unleash the surprise. So we have some good excursions coming up as we get into the spring and summer. We had our meeting yesterday, and Victoria sort of laid out the entire year, the kind of excursions that she is planning. And we hope, we're trying to do some new things. And we have a wonderful young volunteer, Rachel Bell, who has tried to do some intergenerational events with our members. And she did a pumpkin decorating event in October around Halloween. And then she did an event called StoryCorps. I don't know if any of you are familiar with StoryCorps on KQED, PBS, but they're basically interviews. So they were the YMS, no, it was National Charities League, I think we had, that came in, that did interviews as per some questions that she had, or was just a conversation. And some of the interviews were recorded and will be posted on their website to be used whenever they choose to do so. And then she just had an event, or tried to have an event last Sunday, which was a game day, which unfortunately did not turn out as successfully. I think part of it I think was the weather that held people back. I also think that it is on a Sunday afternoon, and folks often on a weekend have other plans. And I think just generally getting people to kind of be introduced to to new activities is a little, I don't know if it's off-putting, but it just seems like we haven't generated the interest in that we would like to. So as per our meeting yesterday, we remembered that we had done a very successful tech event prior to the pandemic in San Mateo at the San Mateo Senior Center with I think it was the National Charities League again, that were our volunteers, and our folks brought devices, phones, iPads, laptops, and had these wonderfully knowledgeable young people who, you know, technology is their world, help with questions and things that they had. And it was very successful. In fact, somebody mentioned that we had like a waiting line of people who were waiting to get questions asked. So I'm hoping that we might be able to, with Rachel's help, redo that and have just be able to reach out and introduce some new things and have people be.
Diane, a question for you.
Yeah.
Would you also like new people on your team?
Well, now, Scott, I didn't want to beat the dead horse here, so I wasn't going to say that. Well, yeah, we would like people on our team, but we would like, I mean, we have a wonderful nucleus of people. What we need is some people to step up to be in charge of some things.
Okay, good. So we'll, Victoria's got her hand up. Victoria, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I said I wasn't going to talk, but I will say one thing. We, with the excursion, we are forming a new team. So we certainly would love to have some of you come forward and with your great talents and interests and knowledge to join us. You don't have to do the whole thing. You just have to work with a very creative staff of people. So please let us know if you're interested and get in touch with us, and I'll stay quiet now.
Great. So Diane, I'm going to move it along unless you have a
the only thing I wanted to add,
you want to give us?
the only thing I wanted to add, Scott, was we also Lillian, it has started walks. She was trying to do them monthly around the area, and the weather has been a little bit difficult, sometimes challenging with that. But that's another new activity that we're trying.
Super. It's a great team. Thank you for leading that and for shepherding all the talent that is part of your big team. Really appreciate it. So another one of our key volunteers, who's the founder, has been with us since the beginning. I'd like to introduce is Patrick Brown. And Pat, maybe you can tell us a bit about your role and things that you're involved in now.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Scott. Thank you for that introduction. And one of the things I wanted to just note was how much work goes on sort of in back to make all of this happen. You know, for those of you that, you know, you drive, and we love you for driving, but there's a ton of stuff going on. And so I'm always floored when we have a gathering like that, and I hear from all the people and just get a bit of a crack in the window into all the activities that go on to make all these wonderful events happen. So I take my hat off to all of you. What I was going to talk about quite briefly is an organization that some of you may not know about. It's called Village Movement California. And I am on their board. I'm their board treasurer, as it happens. And Village Movement California came into existence in, I think, 2018. And what it's really about is resourcing and leading the village movement across California, which you might have gotten from their name. So we're about growth, we're about scale, we're about sustainability of existing villages, as well as expanding the village footprint. We think, as I think all of you would attest, villages are a really good idea. There are some 50 villages in existence at this point. There are several, 4 or 5 that are under very active development. One of them is up in the Sonoma region. And so our executive director is Charlotte Dixon. Some of you may have heard from Charlotte. We have a conference once a year. We have had a conference once a year. We will have another one this year too, probably in July. Several of the leaders of the village movement, or of villages of San Mateo County, have attended, and I think we all speak highly of those events, the things that they've learned. Charlotte has been a real help to Sue. And she reaches out to all of the executive directors. In fact, under her kind of prodding, there's a Birds of a Feather new executive director group that gets together periodically, which has been just incredibly helpful for all of them. Right? Yeah, big thumbs up there. So I'm not going to say much more. I would encourage you, if you would like to know more, we do have a website. Surprisingly, it's called Village Movement California.org. Go out and take a look at it. It's got lots of great stuff. There's a newsletter, comes out every 2 months. You can sign up for the newsletter. It is a rockin' newsletter. There is a lot of really great information. A lot of work goes into putting together a lot of really good information about what various villages are up to, you know, ideas on trying stuff out, what's going on across the United States, what's going on in California. So it's an exciting time.
Indeed. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it very much. So I'm going to share my screen now and take you through some service statistics and membership statistics, kind of comparing the villages. We're going to start with something that's called our monthly KPIs. And I assume that you can all see this now on the screen. This is prepared by one of our volunteers, Tom Clark, a real technical wizard. And it starts at the VSMC overall level and shows that we have 273 total members now, of whom 81 are social. And then in between those two numbers, it also shows you how many fully vetted volunteers we have, 221. And so this is becoming closer to the total number of members. We've never had it that high, but it's getting closer. The average age of members in VSMC is over 82, and it's about 3/4 female. Now, I'm going to attempt to scroll down. There's the MPV statistics. When I'm going to move to Sequoia Village, we have about a little over half of the members in VSMC. We just got off to a really great start in 2015-16, and there was momentum, and now it kind of feeds on itself by word of mouth. So we have 148 total members, 25 social members. So we're much more heavily skewed towards full services. And that is the basis on which we started, was we're a service organization helping older adults to continue to live in their own homes by providing services and resources and community activities. And because we started on the services up first, we became very much a service organization. Later on, a couple of people have referred to this already, we started working towards more social events and taking the pure transactional service part to a little bit lower level. Nevertheless, service is huge in Sequoia and in Mid-Peninsula Village. Sequoia is the oldest in terms of average age. We're 84 years on average. We do have 130 of the 221 vetted volunteers. And we are also about 3/4 female, 1/4 male. And then details on Village of the Coast side. I show this mainly just to show the difference in the type of organization they are. Of their 62 total members, 46 are social. So they've, from the beginning, been more of a social interaction, community gathering type of village, lower on services, but they desire to get into the service function more. They're also a bit younger. Their average age is 77, compared with what was it, 82 and 84 for MPV and Sequoia Village. So I thought you might be interested in seeing those snapshot statistics of our villages. And then I'd also like to show you on the services side what it looks like. So I'm sharing another screen. Okay, some of you have seen this on a monthly basis, but many of you have never seen it. And this is the 12-month trend of numbers of services delivered to our members. The numbers on the index are kind of small, but let me just tell you that the average across here is a little over 400 services per month, which means that we're somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 services per year, which is quite astounding. And that means that it requires a huge force of volunteers, many of whom become very active in fulfilling the service requests. And it's just, it's amazing to me always to see the passion and the compassion that is delivered by our volunteers to our members. It makes them feel good. It makes the members feel good. It's just a true community spirit going on from the beginning. We called it neighbors helping neighbors. And that phrase, of course, is used in many organizations, but it really applies in the village work. In this bar chart, the primary service, or the largest one, it's not primary, but it's the largest one, is this color. That's transportation. And we're giving on average a little bit over 300 rides per month now to our members. So I think maybe I will open it up for questions if this is new information or surprising information to anybody, to let folks say what they'd like. I'm going to close that screen now. Any questions on services? And I look out at some of the faces, and sorry to embarrass you, Mike, but Mike Garrett has been one of our superstars in driving, just incredible. As so many people in the group here, Leonie, Randy, Bob DeFranco, all the people that have spoken already. Dan, I see, who's going to pick up Marisa Malatesta, our very first member. He's going to pick her up for a ride this week. So it's just incredible to be part of such an amazing team of people that deliver so many services. I have a couple more documents I'll share, but if anybody has questions they want to ask, now would be the time.
Sue has her hand up.
Go
Scott,
ahead.
I had a quick comment. When
Yeah.
I talk with other villages, the level of our service level is just kind of off the charts. So by way of comparison, it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. Okay, I'm going to show another document now. This looks at the same overall number of services, but I thought it might be useful to see how many of the services are being requested by members of each of the villages and fulfilled by volunteers in each of the villages. And it's a nice balance. You love it when it turns out this way. In the upper left-hand part of this table, you see that members of MPV, Mid-Peninsula Village, have requested just over 1,000 services during 2022. And then if you look at this column of their volunteers, they delivered somewhat over 1,000 services during the year. So it's a nice balance. Similarly for Sequoia Village, which requested over 3,000 services during the year, and down here delivered a bit over 3,000. Village of the Coastside is not nearly as much into the service arena yet, although they're working towards it. And they are also very close on their services requested versus services delivered by their volunteers. Some of the numbers reflect the fact that this fourth line, office shifts, is really a hub or VSMC function. And there were 319 office shifts served during the year. 56 of those were satisfied by MPV volunteers, and whopping 245 by Sequoia Village volunteers, the team that Randy introduced earlier. And then on the coast side, Kathy Conry, who is a VSMC staff, she served 18 shifts. Well, that was in 2022. There's probably even more, a higher rate in 2023. So this chart, I think, is useful for each of the villages to see that they're contributing in a very balanced way to the overall picture. Further, any questions on services, trends? Diane, I think I saw your hand go up for a
Yeah,
second.
I was just curious, Scott, in the interaction that you and Sue or whoever has had with other villages, are rides the number one across the board for villages, pretty much?
Around the country, yes, as a whole, transportation, and we knew that when we were first getting into it. Some villages do not get that much into the service arena, and so the answer would be different for them. But for villages that deliver services, transportation is usually number one.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Randy.
I just wanted to make the point that when we get calls, we know which village the member is in because it comes up in their profile. But we don't make any distinction between villages when we're entering them, and the volunteers can take any service request in any of the 3 villages. So it's not restricted, and it's not even preferred that you stay within your village. When we have to make phone calls because we've got something that hasn't been picked up, we often do start in this with volunteers that live closest to the member. But other than that, it's totally transparent where the member is and where the volunteer is.
Right. Thank you for pointing that out, Randy. And I maybe could have gone a little further in this chart. Just looking at the top line, for example, 106 service requests from MPV members. 605 were satisfied by MPV volunteers and 400 by Sequoia Village. So there was a lot of crossover there. And same thing on the Sequoia Village requests, 561 were satisfied by MPV volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay, I have a major goal as part of this meeting, and that is to expose to all of you some of the really exciting opportunities that are available. You heard about some of them already from the leads of the various teams, but I want to share one more document that I think opens up some additional possibilities. These are some of the key volunteer positions that are filled or not filled in Sequoia Village. And I'm just going to read through them from the top. We have 6 board members out of the 12 board members in VSMC. 6 of them are from Sequoia Village. 3 of them actually represent the village, and the other 3 attempt to represent the VSMC organization overall. And all of these folks from Sequoia Village were part of the original founding team. And at some point, they're going to say, oh, okay, I've done enough years on the board. I should open up a spot for somebody else. So be thinking about that as you kind of evolve through your engagement in village activities. Is being on the board something that might interest you? And then we've got some yellow highlighted spots down here. I'm not going to disappear. I keep telling everybody that, but I am going to disengage from a lot of my activities in the village. Shirley and I are spending a good portion of this year back in Portland, Maine, where our youngest grandchildren reside. And so the position of Sequoia Village Chair needs to be filled at some point. And it doesn't have to be one person in that role. It can be a co-chair function, and it can be divided up in various ways. So if you have interest in being part of the top of the team for the Sequoia Village organization, then I would encourage you to consider that. And you don't have to raise your hand during this meeting, but call me afterwards because we need to get these positions filled. Dave McClure, who gave the report earlier on the budget, he is and will continue to be, I think, for hopefully a long time, our treasurer, as well as treasurer of VSMC overall. Club Express accounting details and bookkeeping and tracking of grants and other things has been done by Marty Moore for quite some number of years now, and she's looking to pull back to some degree. So if you like detail work and meticulous data entry, not necessarily in large volumes, but it must very, very much be done accurately, then we can introduce you to Marty and you can start to take over some of her tasks. Oh, Sue, you've got your hand raised? You're muted.
I just wanted to put a point on that. Marty is stepping back in a couple ways. One is that she manages all of the member data and renewals, and we're looking for somebody to step in. It's about a 10 to 12 hour a week role. And then she also records donations and sends out thank you letters. And that's a much smaller role of maybe an hour a month, and then it swells with the year-end campaign. So wanted to put a plug in.
Good, yeah, and taking over any or all of Marty's functions, it doesn't have to be it all, right? It can be just parts of it that fit the availability of the individual that's doing it. Okay, thank you for that. Office volunteers were introduced earlier, and there's always room for more. Member coordinators, Cynthia and Sandra gave you an introduction. Stephanie Meyer is also part of their team. I think she's attending this meeting, and she will help them as new members come on board. Volunteer coordinator, now Irene used to do this, and then Pat Kelleher, and then I took it on some months ago because I really wanted to put a strong push on recruiting new volunteers. And in fact, we've taken on probably over 30 in the last 6 months. So that push was very successful. But we're looking for people that will carry on this volunteer coordinator role. And it could be multiple people doing it together. And what it means is attending some of the senior events where we put up a table and recruit, and then following up with the individuals that show interest, giving them orientation training. And I'm happy to work with people to help them learn this function. So please contact me after the meeting. Fundraising and grant writing. I will continue to do that for a while, but I would love to train somebody else and to show them some of the opportunities. And then from the VSMC side, Sue is going to be all over this, raising money for the organization overall. Under handy person leads, we have a number within Sequoia Village who participate in a larger team of VSMC handy person leads. So grateful for Bill and Bob, Jerry and Dan, and always looking for more. We do have a lot more handy person than that, but these have been our primary contributors over the years. Then we've got an emergency preparedness team that got real active during the pandemic, and we're kind of coasting on momentum, I think, for now. Bob DeFranco is the key person in that role, but if you want to hook up with Bob and join in emergency preparedness, that would be great. Social events was well covered by Diane a little bit ago. Something many of you might not know about is called the Fish Rides program. Fish was a rides service that was started by Dave McClure's wife, Sally, and Dave, something like 45 or 50 years ago. And it kind of disappeared during the pandemic. But rather than have it die altogether, Pat and Debbie Brown wondered if Sequoia Village could take it on, and we have. And so the nutshell on it is that we give transportation rides to people who need a ride to a medical appointment, even if they're not a village member. And we do this so that the Fish program will continue to thrive. And it doesn't take too much of the energy away from the drivers that satisfy our members' needs. And Meals on Wheels, Leonie Batkin is one of the lead people in that program. We deliver the route in Redwood Shores, so it's within the Sequoia Village District. But volunteers from MPV can also participate in it. We have something like half a dozen or more drivers who deliver Meals on Wheels. This is a great partnership because it shows our commitment to Peninsula Volunteers, Inc., who do all of the Meals on Wheels for San Mateo County and part of Santa Clara County. And they really appreciate when volunteers from other organizations get involved, as we have done. Then we've got a technology data team across the overall VSMC, but the three main contributors from Sequoia Village are Steve Childs, Tom Clark, and myself, and I'll continue to be active there. I'm always fascinated by how much you can pull out of Club Express in order to create some of the charts and tables that you've seen already today. But if there are others who would like to be involved in data management, data use, and putting it into interesting and useful reports, please let us know. And we're nearing the end, but Each Green Corner is a local nonprofit started by a woman in San Carlos. It has a couple of different parts to the program, but the part that we're involved in is called Senior Gardens. And basically that means we have identified some of our members who have yard space and willingness to have people come to their yards on a weekly basis to grow vegetables. And then the results of that effort turn into a harvest, some of which goes to the member, and any excess then is donated to Second Harvest. Again, it's a great partnership. It's opened up many opportunities for really fun interaction that makes good PR as well. Lorraine Lou White of MPV is the lead person on Each Green Corner Senior Gardens now. I'm stepping away from that this year. So there's an opening for somebody to join with Lorraine and manage maybe half a dozen gardens using the skills of other volunteers to do it, but at least be the person who tracks what's going on at the senior gardens. A couple other key positions that go on behind the scenes. Margaret Miranda sends birthday cards to every Sequoia Village member and volunteer if we know their birthdays. And that's a huge thing. And so she's got letters going out, multiple times every week. Again, it just all happens behind the scenes, but I know it's very much appreciated by the people who receive a simple little birthday card. Sally McClure, we call our Sunshine Gal. If we know of somebody who's had an illness or an injury and needs a little moral support, then Sally sends a encouragement, get well card type of thing. So I'm sure I know there are other key positions within Sequoia Village, but I wanted to highlight some of them and the openings that exist right now. Randy, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. Along these lines, you see here that we have handy person leads. There may be other opportunities for different groups of volunteers. For example, the technology volunteers that take care of computers and phones and TVs and all of that could come together as an affinity group and help to make policy and figure out what new services we might want to offer. The other is the drivers. That's a big contingent of our volunteers. And it might be helpful to have the drivers get together. How can the system work for them better? How can they assign rides better? All of that. So those are two possibilities where we might form a new affinity group within Sequoia Village specifically.
Sounds good. So we've completed the agenda down to the last point, which was to have a word from our executive director, Sue Eldridge, who has already spoken eloquently already a couple of times. But Sue, I'm sure you have more for us.
First to unmute. Yes. Well, first and foremost, a huge thank you to all of you that volunteer. Seeing those figures, it's just astounding what VSMC and particularly what Sequoia Village delivers in terms of services and resources for our members and social events. It's, the scale is just sort of unprecedented. When I stepped in, I expected, sometimes volunteer organizations are a little raggedy, and I can't say enough about the incredible dedication and generosity of the volunteers, and not just through services to our volunteers, but the running of the organization. It's just amazing. There are no cracks. The big challenge is there really aren't. I mean, it's amazing. The big challenge, as people have been volunteering for years and years, and particularly our founders, is to really build a bench of new leadership coming in, as witnessed with Scott stepping back and all that he's given and will continue to do in a lessened role. we really need to be kind of cultivating new leaders to step in. So I hope you all will, those of you that aren't fully engaged, will think about stepping up. I think of my role, I think my role as the executive director is really to shepherd the villages of San Mateo County as a whole toward sustainable organizational infrastructure through time. So as Scott mentioned, I've been hired full-time. We'll be adding a half-time volunteer manager and a half-time social events coordinator. So those staff positions aren't meant in any way to supplant all that's going on with our volunteers at the helm, but it's really to sort of amplify and kind of enable us to extend our reach. So the hope through time is that we can grow and add more members and more volunteers, and they can all be very well supported and importantly appreciated. So, so it's that sustainability that we're all focused on, always being a volunteer-driven organization, but ensuring that as volunteers who have given a lot need to step back, there's always a bench, and we know VSMC will be, an organization that's here for the community, a treasure, forever, built to last, as they say. So thank you. I want to just appreciate Scott, especially at this moment, what you've given, your dedication as a founder, as the Sequoia chair, and really playing an executive director role when there hasn't been one, especially through the pandemic. It's just kind of unparalleled, the time and energy and commitment and love you've given to VSMC. I particularly enjoyed hearing you say that you're stepping back but not disappearing.
Yeah, well,
But we're so very grateful, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words and recognition. And I would just want to pass them on to everybody here. I mean, it takes
Absolutely.
sort of an old expression, it takes a village, but hey, this is the village. And thank you all for being a key part of it. So I'm going to close the official part of the meeting because I take pride in finishing on time. And we're finishing about almost 15 minutes early, but I don't want to take away your fun. If anybody wants to continue with conversations and questions, please go ahead. I could play moderator, but my part is essentially done now. Ada, did I see your hand go up?
It was just a clap to second everything. You have been amazing, and in addition to that, the MELT program, the medical loan, it cannot be overstated how important you have been. Thank you so much.
Thank you for mentioning MELP. It wasn't really going to be part of the meeting conversation today, but it needs a few words. Started with the Belmont Redwood Shores Rotary as an idea about 1.5 years ago. And I got called one day by one of the Rotary members asking if the village would like to participate in this because they knew we'd been doing something along those lines. And I said, yeah, sounds like a good fit. And then we got San Carlos Rotary involved, and the thing has just mushroomed. It's in the first year, we loaned out over 500 pieces of medical equipment. I mean, I'm blown away. Where did we even get 500 pieces of medical equipment? Well, it turns out everybody's got them in their closets and attics and garages. And when the word is out that we'll take your used equipment that's still in great shape, it's coming to us faster than we can handle it, honestly. So storage becomes an issue. This is a great point for me, a great time for me to make a pitch. And that is, do any of you know of about 2,000 square feet of real estate that's available? Free would be nice, but we do have a budget. We can pay almost going market rate. Something in an industrial park kind of situation, the kind of buildings you see down on Industrial Road, Old County Road. Doesn't have to be pretty, but we need some space for our operation. Right now, we're operating out of storage lockers and a kind of dingy basement. So thanks for bringing it up, Ada. Appreciate it. And it is a great program. Other thoughts? Diane Goldman.
I just wanted to thank you for this meeting, Scott. This was really, I appreciated it because, you know, all of us, you know, we're all little worker bees and we do our part and to contribute to the greater good here. But it's good to have the overview of what's gone on. It's miraculous. It really is amazing what this organization has done over the years, and the financial stability we have is just terrific. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad it was useful. That felt really good to put this together. Going once. Do all of you feel like you've found your happy place in the village, or are there more things you'd like to be involved in? Again, you don't have to answer right now, but send us a note after the meeting because there are just so many fun opportunities out there. It's incredible. All right. Well, I see lots of happy faces, but no more raised hands. So I think maybe we'll conclude this meeting. Thank you for taking